Done with authority. Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to the Rotary Club of York, the 26th largest Rotary Club in the world, and a club dedicated to imagining and living out the Rotary mission of service above self. I'm Glenn Miller, the club president. Our opening song today, My Country 'Tis of Thee, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Linda Gorter. Our invocation will be led by Michael Reichman, and our visitors and visiting Rotarians will be introduced by one of my favorite York College colleagues, Jeff Vermeulen. Please take a moment to silence your electronic devices.
Good afternoon, everyone. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please join me in this brief meditation. In the words of the great sage Mel Brooks from his family-friendly flick Blazing Saddles, he said, work, 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 work. Workers are the backbone of modern commerce. They are responsible for everything from the roads we drive on to the food we're eating this afternoon. In this day and age where there has been the glorification of entrepreneurship, being a small business owner, a freelancer, or self-employed, let us not devalue the life and role of an employee. For if everyone was their own boss, nothing would ever get done or produced. But just like customers, workers have to be won over too. Let us pray that employers, both large and small, have the wisdom to enlist retention techniques that help not only their business's bottom line, but also that of the employee. Because through employee continuity, a business can be an even greater asset to its community. For this, we give thanks. Amen.
All right. I am pleased to have the honor of introducing our guest for today's meeting. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing until President Glenn has welcomed you. We have with us today, Nate Estabrook, guest of CJ Gross. Kayla Johnson, guest of CJ Gross. Michael Rasco, guest of Fred Walker. Alex Chitterini, guest of JT Hand. Lindsay Sturkey, guest of past President Ann Druck. And Alex Gibson, guest of past President Rob Bowen. Jenny Goodling, another guest of past President Rob Bowen. Oh, wow. And Walt, you've got a few guests here too. Wonderful. Sarah Doyle, guest of Walt Tilley. Chris Harris, guest of Walt Tilley. Kate Hines, guest of Walt Tilley. Amanda Roche, guest of Walt Tilley. Matthew Stelfox, guest of Walt Tilley. Suzanne Tilley, guest of Walt Tilley. And David Walker, guest of Walt Tilley. Thank you.
Friends, thank you for joining us today. I know that you will enjoy the program, and I hope that you will return to visit with us again. As you have hopefully already realized, because besides being very amusing, our club is a lively and diverse group of community leaders, all of whom would warmly welcome your interest in joining our ranks. Rotarians, please help me welcome our visitors today. You may be seated. And just a note to the stock and leader guests, I hope that Walt did let you know that these are not billable hours. Enjoyable, I hope, but not billable. Several announcements before we continue with our program. The membership committee will meet today at 1:30 in the mixed grill downstairs following our meeting. The PPE committee will meet on November the 9th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. And finally, in the announcements department, the collection of the recycled green bags will take place on November the 9th. Please drop off your plastics to be recycled at the CRDC truck, which will be out in the parking lot here at CCY between 11:30 a.m. and noon, just prior to the beginning of our meeting. And now to give us an update on youth exchange, it is not Walt Tilley, but instead my lovely predecessor, past President Jackie Summers.
Good afternoon. The Youth Exchange Program has been a beacon of light for the Rotary Club of York for many decades, both in sending students abroad and in hosting inbound students here in our community. This year, our club is hosting two absolutely exceptional students, Jen Lefort from France, studying at York Suburban, and Julian Thierry from Belgium, studying at Dallastown. Part of the success of the program depends on families who are willing to host students for a 3-month period during their year. We are in great need of host families for both Jen and Julian beginning December 1st to March 1st, and again from March to the end of the school year. Our own Andy Mears and his wife Connie are currently hosting Jen, and they have this to say. Jen is very outgoing and has made lots of friends at the high school. She is a typical US teenager now and is always on the go, whether with the Model UN chorus, York Suburban Singers, or the school play. She is busy. She's very independent and an extremely healthy eater. She's always willing to help around the house. She does her own laundry and often cooks for herself. She's a great cook and makes incredible chocolate chip cookies. Former Rotarian Krista Dar and her husband Mike are hosting Julian and have this to say. Julian is great. He helps with chores around the house without being asked. His bedroom and bathroom are cleaner than when our kids were home. He has a great sense of humor. He's very laid back and makes friends easily. He's always game to do whatever the family is doing, hiking, running, shopping, football watching, and is open to new experiences. He's also very easy to cook for. He makes his breakfast every day before school and packs his own lunch. He couldn't be much easier. To host, you simply need to live either in the York Suburban School District or Dallastown area school district. You can be empty nesters or you can have a house full of kids. It doesn't matter, and they like pets too. So please consider hosting Jen or Julian, or recommend other people that you know who live in the districts to consider. And if you're interested, just let someone know on the committee. You can also ask questions if you have them of their counselors, John Yates, Albert Blakey, or myself, or any member of our committee. If the committee is here, please raise your hand so we can see who some of you are. Just a couple of you are here. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need additional information. And we are so very grateful for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you for the great work of that very important committee. President-elect nominee Courtney Piccolo will now share some important information from the Communications Committee.
All right. Hello, everybody. I have exciting news. Our club's annual report is released hot off the press. You can see it pictured here. I would encourage you to go ahead and check it out. Perfect. Thank you. So where would you be able to check it out at? Well, you can find it in 3 different places. So the first place would be Facebook. We posted it there yesterday. Due to extremely creepy technology, I can tell that 6 of you have clicked on it already and read it. So thank you to the 6 of the people who have already clicked on this. You can also find it in the announcer that Lynn sends out, the weekly email in the next 2 weeks. It'll be posted in there. And then lastly, you can find it on our club's website. So how do you find it on our club's website? Well, you would be able to find it by going to the club's website and clicking on the resource tab. When you click on the resource tab, it'll let you have a drop down, which you can go ahead and click on that now on the resource tab. And perfect. Yep. And then you'll see as you click on that one more time, you will see the annual report spot open up and you're able to go through it and you're able to just view this year's report that just came out. You can also see last year's report that's in there and the previous year before that as well. So I'd encourage you to check it out. I'm up here for two reasons. So first one was to tell you about the annual report. The second reason is on behalf of the communications committee who puts together the annual report is to tell you we are looking for new members. So what does the communications committee do, you may ask? Well, we do all of these things listed here. We post the content to our club's Facebook page as well as our LinkedIn. We also manage and maintain the club's Rotary website. We promote activities of the club and we send out different press releases to the local media. What would the time commitment look like if you were interested in becoming a part of the communications committee? It would be about 2 hours per month, and that does include a 1 hour meeting per month. So it's really just 1 hour outside of the club meeting, or outside of the committee meeting, I should say. So why would you join the communications committee? I'm glad you asked. We have lots of reasons. So to take part in spreading the word of all the great work that our club is doing. If you are comfortable with social media, not a requirement, but helpful. If you're literate. If you want to be in the know about everything that's going on in the club, especially if you're a new member and you're trying to understand everything that's going on in the club, it'd be a really great committee to join. If you want to help shape the future of how our club presents ourselves. Obviously, our club has the most fun. There's usually alcohol at our committee meetings, if I haven't sold you yet. And then lastly, food. There's usually food at our committee meetings. So you're sitting here in the room, you're thinking, oh gosh, this committee sounds perfect for me. How would I join? Well, Sarah, if you're in the room, if you could just stand up, wave your hand, do a quick dance or something. This is Sarah. She is our committee chair. Thank you. And you can either contact her or do I have any other communications committee members? Show of hands in the room. Okay, 1, 2. So you can see we clearly need members. So if you're interested, you can talk to myself or anybody in the room that just raised their hand about the communications committee and joining our committee. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Courtney. I have it on good authority that they recruited the last committee chair over several drinks. So that thing about the alcohol is true. And thank you for all that the committee does. Our communications in this club have come light years in the last few years, thanks to the work of this committee, and we are very grateful for that. Speaking of committees, continuing our periodic committee moment, even though you sort of just had one on communications, I'm delighted to welcome to the dais Jen May, our IDEA co-chair, who has some things to share with us about the work of this relatively new and extremely important committee among us. Jen.
Good afternoon. Could I please have all of the IDEA committee members stand for a moment? Anyone on the IDEA committee? Okay. As co-chairs, I don't see Cal here. Is Cal here? Cal's not here. As co-chairs, we want to thank this group of Rotarians who come together every other week to really look at the Rotary Club of York through many lenses, hoping to make it more accessible and welcoming to all. So thank you to all that you have done in the past 2 years. We've been around for 2 years. We still have a lot of work to do. So please give a hand for these committee members. As many of you are aware, around this time last year, the IDEA committee held courageous conversations, kind of like focus groups. And one theme that rose from those conversations was the lack of understanding of Rotary by the general community. And what do I mean by that? Well, particularly, do York Countyans see us as a bunch of muckety mucks? Or do they see us as a group of individuals who put service above self? Now, before anyone gets offended by the term muckety muck, I just learned that about 2 months ago from someone at this podium. I don't remember who. So for those of you who didn't know what it means, there's the definition. So back to the survey. Do your countyans see the Rotary Club of York as a bunch of muckety mucks or people who put service above self? The IDEA Committee would like to be known for the latter, and we have started to participate in community service projects. Hopefully you remember Samantha Dorm presenting to the club about the Friends of the Lebanon Cemetery. Founded in 1872, historic Lebanon Cemetery in York, Pennsylvania, was established when the African-American citizens in the area came together to purchase land to bury their families with dignity and respect. Segregation existed even in death. It is the burial site of former slaves, military veterans, religious leaders, and prominent members of the Black community. The Friends of Lebanon Cemetery have begun the work of restoring neglected areas of the burial grounds, discovering long covered graves, and telling stories of those buried there. Oh, you're already there. Earlier this month, IDEA assisted the Friends of the Lebanon Cemetery in cleaning neglected headstones of African-American veterans and setting new headstones of individuals who have only recently been identified, some more than a century after their death. We also spent time with Cornerstone Cleanup, which is a group that walks around the area of the YMCA and Newberry Street once a month to pick up trash. Thank you. Why I'm up here today is we will be doing both of these things again in November, and we would love to extend anybody to come with us, not just the IDEA Committee. Any Rotarian who would like to join us. On Saturday, November 12th, we will be at the Lebanon Cemetery from 9 a.m. till noon, or however much time you can give us. And on Sunday, November 20th, we will be with Cornerstone Cleanup again. That is from 11:30 till 1. If you want coffee and donuts, come at 11. So please, that's an invitation to all. And we want to thank the people who sponsored a wreath of remembrance of our country's fallen heroes who lie in peace at the Lebanon Cemetery. We had a lot of sponsorships just this morning. It is $15 a wreath, and we will be here for one more week. So next week we will be at the table right when you walk in. And then last, on December 17th, for those who sponsored a wreath or even those who did not sponsor but would like to be there, there will be I wouldn't say celebration, but we're going to put the wreaths on the graves of all the veterans that were in the Lebanon Cemetery, and they're going to say the names of each and every veteran aloud. All are welcome to attend. And if you're interested in any of these, whether supporting us with the Wreath of Remembrance or coming with us to our next service projects, please reach out to me at the email over there or come up to me before or after any of the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, and many thanks to the work of the committee that has, again, is one of our, maybe our newest committee as a club, but has been hit the ground running and been doing great and important work among us. There is no greater joy for a president than to preside over the induction of new members of our club. So past President Josh George, please come forward and introduce our new members.
Thank you, President Glenn, and good afternoon, Rotarians and visitors. So as it's been my pleasure this year, I always have the distinct pleasure of introducing our new members to the club. And I went back and I looked, and I believe this is the 14th time this year that I've been up at the podium to do so. And to President Glenn's comment a minute ago, what can make a president happier than doing this 14 times in a calendar year? So here we go again today, and we are going to go in alphabetical order. We have a letter F, a letter G, and a letter H. Not that that has anything at all to do with anything, but I just thought it was interesting. So we will start with Marissa Fish. She's in the middle. Marissa is a graduate of Bel Air High School. She went to Kutztown University, where she earned a BS in business administration, as well as her MBA. And then she went on to the University of Baltimore, where she earned an MS in nonprofit management. Professionally, she is the director of individual giving for Planned Parenthood Keystone. And her community service includes volunteering with the Delta Zeta sorority, where she served as parliamentarian, and also with alumni relations. Her hobbies include hiking, kayaking, and crafting. And she is engaged to Montrell Kuntz, and she is proposed by Jen May. Ladies and gentlemen, Marissa Fish. Next up is Dr. Teresa Gregory. Teresa is a graduate of William Penn High School. She went to York College, where she earned a BS degree in marketing and an MS in finance. And she went on to earn her doctorate at Walt University in business administration and finance. She is employed by Traditions Bank, where she serves as both president of Traditions Mortgage, I should say, and also president of the York region. Her volunteer activities include, she is the current board president of the York Builders Association. She serves on the as a finance committee chair for Affordable Housing Advocates. She is a board member of the York County Libraries and also a board member of RAYAC. Her hobbies include running and reading. And she is married to Tom. They have 2 children, Logan, who is 25, and Megan, who is 22. And Teresa was proposed by Jean Dragonoski. Ladies and gentlemen, Teresa Gregory. And finally, we have Mike Hawn, the H. Mike went to Dallastown High School, and then he went on to Penn State University, where he earned his BS in finance. He is employed at Merrill Lynch, where he serves as vice president and a wealth management advisor. His community service includes, he is a board member with the York County Community Foundation. He serves on the allocation steering committee for the United Way. And his hobbies include marathon running, golf, and studying history. Now, I'm a runner, and I will tell you that marathon running is not a hobby. It's a commitment. It's a good one, but it's a commitment nonetheless. He is married to Katie, and they have 2 kids, Evan, who is 8, and Reagan, who is 7. And he is proposed by BJ Fegley. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Hawn.
Thank you, Josh. Friends, we are absolutely delighted to welcome you. Yes, you can return to your seats while I talk. We can multitask. Absolutely delighted to welcome you to our ranks. I know that the gifts and the talents and the passions that all of you bring will make us a better club. And I hope that all that we are will make you a better member of the York community. We look forward to seeing you here on Wednesdays, and even more to your involvement in the work of this club that goes on throughout the community in so many and various ways in between our meetings here on Wednesdays. Well, friends, again, let's welcome our new Rotarians. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Rotarian Ron Hirschner to the podium to introduce his colleague and our friend, our speaker today. Ron.
It's my great pleasure today to introduce my colleague and partner at Stock and Leader, Walt Tilley. Most, if not all of you know Walt and know of his dedication to the Rotary Club, especially to the youth exchange programs. So instead, I will note some aspects of his legal career that pertain to his presentation today. Walt is a graduate of Syracuse University and the Temple University Beasley School of Law. In 1982, Walt became an associate attorney at what was then Stetler and Gribben. 40 years ago, only the most senior and experienced of attorneys in York were able to specialize their practice in areas in any way. At Stetler and Gribben, Walt handled insurance litigation of all types, corporate work, insurance defense, real estate, municipal work, employment issues, the gamut. In 2005, Walt, seeking to refine the focus of his practice, joined as a partner at Stock and Leader. In that regard, Walt's journey and mine are quite similar. We've both been in excellent medium-sized law firms, but we're handling an array of practice areas. At Stock and Leader at that time, Mike King was building a firm where attorneys could concentrate in a couple of practice areas, enabling them to develop a higher level of competence. By joining Stock and Leader, Walt was able to concentrate on commercial litigation and employment law. Walt, as the chair of our litigation committee, oversees all litigation matters in the firm, and he is the senior member of our employment team. Walt is an exceptional mentor, not only to the youth exchange students, of which you're well aware, but also to our young lawyers. The attendance today of a number of our young attorneys is a testament to Walt's mentorship in our firm. Walt's topic today pertains to his employment law expertise. Everywhere you go today, you see help wanted signs. Every client I talk to is seeking more qualified employees. The labor market, disrupted by the pandemic, is now in the midst of a revolution. Walt has some innovative ideas to share with you regarding this time of labor shortages and changing workforce expectations. I'm honored to introduce to you today, Walt Tilley.
Thank you, Ron, for that kind introduction, and thank you to my colleagues from Stock and Leader for being here today. I appreciate the support, and it was also good for me to know that actually someone would be here when I was talking today. As those of you who follow football know, Tom Brady is having a tough year. And I had predicted that because you cannot perform at a top level if you do not have the support of your spouse. And my spouse, Suzanne, is here today. And I'd like to thank you for the 36 years of support that you have provided to me and my practice. In the meantime, Mike Summers, who's the chair of our program committee, is sitting back there going, this was supposed to be about the labor market, and he's got something about culture. What is going on? I hope it's not something about the food in his refrigerator. It's not. We're going to, though, I've kind of given you an advanced look, a shorthand look at the secret sauce that we're going to talk about today, leadership and culture in a corporate environment. But to understand why that is relevant, we need to look at some history. In 1967, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act was passed under President Johnson. In 1986, the continuation of health coverage, we call it COBRA, was passed under President Reagan. In 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. And in 1993, the Family and Medical Leave Act was passed, both under President Bush. And then, of course, in 2010, we had the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act under President Obama. And that's what makes us unqualified to handle the labor shortage today. You see, for all of our careers, human resource has been focused on compliance with regulations, compliance with laws, managing employees and trying to get them to conform and trying to get our businesses run in an era of when we needed compliance. And then something happened. First, baby boomers have one foot in the grave. And so they started to retire. And second, we had the pandemic, which was even more impactful on our workforce. I mean, consider this. We had an expansion in 2021 alone of 4 million jobs. In that same year, we had 47 million workers quit their jobs and change to new jobs. There are now 3 million fewer workers in the workforce than there were in 2018. It's an unbelievable sea change. Not only that, but the people who are replacing baby boomers have a different philosophy. They want more than money. They want meaning in their work. And so today I am here because I want to help you strengthen your organization to meet these challenges. The challenge today is not just to find the right employee. The challenge today is to convince the applicants for a position that your position is right for them. So how are we doing that? Well, two ways seem to be prevalent. One, we're going to throw money at it, and two, we're going to abandon our standards. And so we're going to start higher wages, $15 an hour or higher now are common. We see Amazon advertising prepaying tuition. You don't even need to establish that you've passed the course to get the money. Some companies have advertised no pre-employment drug screening. When you work there, hi isn't just a greeting, it's a question. And some say no interview is required. Is this our future? Is this where we want to go? Or is this like my jokes, bad today and not likely to get better with time? But not only have we have a struggle hiring, we have a struggle retaining employees. Meet Chris. Chris is a good friend of Suzanne and me. He worked as a personal care assistant at a nursing home, and he was good at it. Where the other personal care assistants, when they weren't responding to a call bell, would go to their break room. He went out to the floor and he talked with each of the residents. He got to know them, their jobs and their families. He's a good cook too. And he made baklava, and he brought in a big tray of baklava for the healthcare workers at the nursing home. Well, the nursing home knew what to do. They made him employee of the week. They put his name up on the bulletin board and recognized him for what he's done. Great idea, right? You're recognizing a good employee. The trouble was, it backfired. What Chris came to our home and he told us over dinner, he said, my fellow employees now are trash talking me to my supervisor. They won't help me like with patient lifts, things like that. They isolate me. They won't eat with me anymore. What's going on? Now, in addition to all the other issues, we have workplace bullying. As figured by isolation, aggression, intrusion into someone's workspace, minimizing their contributions to the company, intimidating them, making unwarranted criticism, embarrassing, and gossip. And who are the targets? I always thought, if you're being bullied, it's like the awkward elementary school kid. You know what I'm talking about in the playground? It's not in the workforce. In the workforce, it's your skilled workers, it's your creative ones, it's your efficient ones, the knowledgeable ones, the problem solvers, the popular ones who are caring and social and collaborative and who are non-confrontational. And within a week, Chris had given his notice. Who does it? Who are the perpetrators of this kind of thing? Well, the people who feel insecure, they have low self-esteem, they feel powerless, they feel the need to control others. They get rewarded because of their aggressiveness, their decisions are questioned less. They feel more popular because others will join them, so they're not the subject of this aggression. They're held to a lower standard because supervisors don't want to supervise. It's too much hassle. They're too much of a pain. So look at the changes we're facing. We are now moving from a compliance market and focus on work skills to now a financial, a psychological, and diversity. Those are the challenges that we're looking at now. So what do we do? How do we meet these challenges? And what I'm going to suggest to you is this. We need to change from external focus to internal focus. We need to change from a compliance perspective, from getting employees to do what we want, from complying with laws, and we need to take a look internally. We need to make it employer focused. Why? Because you will never persuade an employee to come with your compliance policies. If you have compliance policies and that's the focus of your human resources, there's no foundation there for supporting great employees. There's just a foundation to keep you out of court. That's not good enough in this market. We need more. How do you do that? Well, first of all, you have to identify what you need, and then you have to implement. To identify, you have to articulate. It's hard work because you have to write it down. You have to articulate what is the culture you want at your company. You have to articulate what are the standards that you need to be successful. And then to implement takes two things. It takes leadership on your part and it takes management to make it happen. You've got to put the pieces together. Well, how do we do that? How do we start with a culture? How do we get this? Where does it even begin? It begins here, believe it or not, with a mission, a vision, and a value statement. Unbelievable, right? Who would think of that? But we start by answering those questions. Let's show you how not to do it. I found this on the internet. This is cute. The mission of the foundation is to increase access to justice for all people, particularly those struggling with poverty and abuse, improve administration of justice, promote public understanding of and respect for the law, encourage careers and promote. My goodness. That's not a mission statement. That's a list of program accomplishments or program accomplishments that you want. It doesn't apply to everyone in the organization. And it misses their major point. They're a foundation. What do? They raise money, and it's not even in their mission statement. Anybody have an idea who might get it right? Don't look too far. Mission statement, service above self. Everybody here knows that. People of action. We know that. That's our vision. That's who we are. When people see us, that's what we look at. The four-way test. We know our values. It's short. It's known by everyone. It applies to everyone from His Royal Highness President Glenn to His Royal Pain me. Okay, so, and not only that, we know it works because you're here. Do you remember you had to apply to be a member and you had to put forth your community service? You had to put forth information about your vision and your values and who you were as a person? And did you hear what I said? The word apply. Do you understand how there may be a connection now between vision, values, and mission and an application like in another context for a job? And how when you apply these things, you retain people. We did not get to be the 26th largest club by accident. We got to be the 26th largest club because we have a mission, because we have a vision, and because of values that we follow. You know what the trouble is? Well, think about this. Your other organizations that you volunteer with, same thing, right? You're looking at what they do, you like their mission, you like their vision, you like their values, you support them. The trouble is that employers have never used those tools for themselves. They've been relegated to the world of nonprofits. But we can use them in an employment setting in for-profit organizations just as well. And then what do? You use leadership to model it. You follow that mission, you follow that vision, you adopt those values, you apply them in your work. You bring that into the workplace, and then you begin to implement. You use employee handbooks. Suddenly now, though, these employee handbooks are transformed. They are no longer just compliance issues. These are opportunities for you to become a disciplinarian, or a teacher rather than a disciplinarian. This approach makes a big difference in your whole strategy. You can then use job descriptions for the same purpose. I want to show you something, though. If you articulate, that's an employer obligation. If you train, that's an employer obligation. If you evaluate, that's an employer obligation. You are taking this on yourself. But what you are doing in doing that is you're exercising leadership. You're recognizing that you no longer are helpless in the face of this labor market. You are taking control through your own organization. You are taking the reins to make this happen. That's leadership. It starts with the interview. Certainly you continue to ask about education, experience, and job skills, but now you can ask broader questions about things like your mission and your vision and their attitudes. Finally, you have a way to interview for attitudes. I want to tell you something too about the training because it's missed a lot. You know how training comes up in my world a lot? I get a call from one of my clients who says, I have an employee who's underperforming. Now, I'm not doing it where I think we're going to have to get rid of them. Well, usually they don't have the documentation to prove it. But so what we do is we start what's called a performance improvement plan, right? Performance improvement plan. We give them the list of things that they need to do and we improve on. We give them a plan by which to do it. We tell them we're going to reevaluate them. You know what that's called? Training. Do it at the beginning. Do it before the problem comes, not afterwards. Remember, discipline does not change behavior. It interrupts it. If you have a kid who's out of control, okay, you can send the kid to his room, but that doesn't help him deal with his anger better next time. Training does. That's what makes the difference. Training creates new behaviors. That's what sets forth the expectations. And then you have to evaluate employees effectively. You need good evaluations. Oh man, do I have a bad one? Oh, where do you hear this? Okay, let's assume I'm going to pick on my colleagues here. I'm going to say, let's say Ron, Sarah. Let's assume that Ron, who introduced me, Sarah Doyle, who is an attorney in the litigation and employment department with me, and I all share a secretary. Now, you know this is false because we do not share a secretary. Okay, so we're making this up, but we have this great evaluation, and the first question on the evaluation is job knowledge. And so Ron goes up and he says, "Well, my secretary does a really good job. I have all of these complicated contract documents, that type of thing. They are all put together appropriately. They're filed and everything's good. I'm going to give her a 5. Sarah says, I had this proceeding before the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. And boy, my secretary put together, it's the same secretary now, put together these documents and everything. We got everything filed with the Human Relations Commission. I'm going to give her 5. And then there's me. I say, well, she struggled with the electronic filing in the federal court system. I'm going to give her a 3. Well, then these 3 performance evaluations go to Carol, who's our HR person, and she says, a 5, a 3, that's 13 out of 15. Very good, secretary. Missed totally why and where the secretary was strong and where the secretary could get good training. Missed it because the performance evaluation does not connect to the job description and the portions of the employee handbook that you need to evaluate. And then there's another problem. Do you remember? It's scale of 1 to 5, right? Well, what does that mean? Who knows? So here's my suggestion to you. Use 3 standards. Use the meets expectations, exceeds expectations, or does not meet expectations. And here's the thing. If you put down meets expectations, you get a free pass. But if you say exceeds expectations, you've got to say why. Attendance exceeds expectations. Why? Well, the secretary came in on Saturday. We put together a very lengthy motion with all of these exhibits and a brief and everything so it could be filed on Monday. She exceeded attendance expectations that way. Does not meet expectations, had trouble filing. So now we know, or had trouble with electronic filing in the court system, something like that. So now what you have is you have specific areas where you can compliment the employee on what the employee has done and where you know where training is needed. And now do you see how you're starting to deal with the psychology? Now do you see how you're starting to deal with making work meaningful? Now do you see how you can retain employees? Because you're evaluating them effectively. How do you do that? Well, you've got to train your evaluators and you've got to evaluate your evaluators on the evaluations that they evaluate. That's how you do that. We forget that step. We forget that we've got to train and hold accountable the people who do the evaluations so that the evaluations you get are accurate. How many times have you had an evaluation in your workplace that exaggerated the performance of the employee, right? Why? Because you didn't have a trained evaluator who was doing it correctly. So there's an opportunity for you to make another change. So, and then finally, let's talk about recognition. One of the things that you want to do is focus your recognition on events, not the person. That was the problem that happened to Chris. He was made Employee of the Month. Okay, if they had recognized things like a good job with patient care, something like that, some specific things, then you get the rewards and people start to see, even those who feel powerless, start to see, oh, this is what I need to do to be successful in the workplace. This is how this works. This is what I need to do. And then they start to feel empowered and you start to overcome some of those negative feelings. That's how this works. That's why the recognition is important. But you've got to make it real. You've got to be present. It's got to be in person. You've got to make it a regular event, and you've got to make sure it's genuine. You've got to make sure it's earned, and you've got to make sure that it's consistent with your mission, your vision, your values, and the job descriptions. Okay? Make it real. Employers are neither helpless nor victims. Use your organization identity to give direction, implement the mission and the vision and the values. I want to say just one other thing. I'll tell the story here. Suzanne, my wife, is the organist and music director at our church, and we're there for 2 services every Sunday. We get there at 7 in the morning and we leave a little after noon. With me every Sunday morning is a 20-year-old guy who has autism. And he comes every Sunday because he's part of the team, because I make sure he knows he's part of the team. He helps me with the soundboard and the AV presentation and getting everything online and getting the videos out to our visitors, the people that go do the visitation, to the shut-ins. During the week, he works at a cafeteria at an elementary school. He is that guy. He is that guy that those kids throw their tray to, and they're done. It's got all the spilled food, the dirty dishes, the trash. And I tell him every Sunday, because I want him to remember, I'm glad you are at that school. I want you and your dedication at that school, because without you, nothing else matters in that kitchen. Without you doing your job, no one can cook because they can't cook on something dirty. No one can serve food because no one can serve food on something that's dirty. And if they eat, they would get sick. How do you think a 20-year-old feels when he hears something like that and goes into the school and cleans trays? I want you to know that you have the power. You can make your jobs meaningful, but it takes work. It takes a transition that we've never had to do before because we were always focused on compliance. It's a different world. Before I end, I want to leave you with this quote from Colin Powell. He said, "Leadership is solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help, or they have concluded that you do not care. Either is a failure of leadership. And now you know the secret sauce. It's leadership, it's culture, it's your mission, your vision, and your values. That's the way out. The nice thing about that is it will also work in a recession." That concludes my remarks. Thank you. I'll take any questions if we have some time. Looking for questions? Yes, go ahead. Yeah, it's the trap, isn't it? What happens if you have a very skilled employee in a small company who's very hostile? What do you do? I guess one of the questions that I would ask is, does the employee know that he's hostile? Because he may not. So what are the standards by which you're measuring hostility? What are the behaviors that you're seeing? Have you sat down and said, you know, I don't know, Bill, but whether you understand, but when you do this, it comes across to people as being hostile. People don't like that. And you can work with training, things like that. Again, there's a process that you can follow. The performance improvement plan that I mentioned is an option for something like that, where you say, so here's, because you can't just tell them what not to do. It's really important you tell them what to do, what to implement, what are you looking for, so that they know how to respond more appropriately in situations. Maybe you can even identify the circumstances when hostility arises. Is it times when he feels, for example, that he's not being respected? Is it times when he feels that there's a lot of work pressure, time deadline, something like that? You see, in this environment, it's very different, isn't it? Because the employer, you're now psychologists, okay? And you have to figure this stuff out, and it's a lot of hard work, but that's the transition we have to make in this market. That's what new employees are looking for, or younger generations of employees are looking for. They're looking for this guidance. They're used to this type of thing. This has been the culture in the education system, and so it's spilling now into the employment area. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? Not seeing a whole, oh, yeah. Could someone repeat the question? I couldn't quite hear it. Oh, raising bonuses to a non-numerical system? Well, that I think is company specific, organization specific, and it depends somewhat on the historical practices that you've had. It also depends on the performances, you know, the metrics that you can apply or can't apply, even in a non-numeric system. I took a very interesting survey through through your college. Dr. David Fife, is it? And one of the things that he points out was he put up a question and he said, assume you had a project and there were 4 people assigned to it. One person did 25% of the work, one person did 40% of the work, one person did 20%, and one person did, I don't know what the remainder is. But in any event, I don't do math, I'm an attorney. But the question was, and then at the end of the project, they found out, well, we have $20,000 to distribute. What do you do? Do you distribute it based on the percentage of the contribution they made, or you distribute it equally? And he pointed out how it's cultural. He said there are some countries, particularly in Asia, that would never even ask that question. They would say it gets distributed equally to everyone because the group, it's a collaborative and it's a group that matters. In others, like our culture, we're much more inclined, but not necessarily always inclined, to reward someone based on their contribution. But then what happens if that small contribution was actually like the final puzzle piece? That person had knowledge that without it, the rest of the whole project would not have worked. Then what do you do? So it's a very complicated process. It's hard to answer in the abstract, but I hope that gives you some idea of how culture and can impact the decision that you make there. Did you have a question?
What's something that you've done over the past, say, 4 or 5 years that you help the culture at Stock and Leader compared to where it was before? And how do you measure that difference?
At Stock and Leader? I would say the thing that makes me proud about Stock and Leader is the consistency of its culture. Oh, I'm sorry. He asked, what about stock and leader, what changes have we seen over the past 4 or 5 years of stock and leader and with respect to culture? And what I would say is that stock and leaders culture, since I have been there since 2005, has been very consistent. It has always been, a real emphasis on client service for our mission, for our vision. It's always been when people view us, they see competence, and our values are our integrity and our work-life balance. And you see that top to bottom, front to back, up and down. Everywhere, and it's been consistent. So to say that there are changes, I wouldn't say that I've seen changes at Stock and Leader. What I would say is that I've seen consistent application of that culture, and it's really worked for our firm. I mean, you take a look at the quality of the people that we have at that table, and that, in my mind, answers the question right there. I think that we're getting the high sign from President Glenn, so thank you, and thank you all for your attention today.
Walt, we are very grateful for your time with us today and what you've shared about what's clearly a critically important issue for all of us, whether we're not-for-profit or for-profit institutions. We've ribbed you a pretty good bit about the uniqueness of seeing you in a role other than Mr. Youth Exchange, but all kidding aside, you're a great example of the breadth and depth of wisdom and knowledge that exists right here in this club. We didn't need to bring in a guest speaker today. We had an excellent one right here in our midst. So thank you so much, Walt, again. Appreciate it. Walt has signed the book plate for the book Brown Bear, Stamp Out and Abolish Redundancy by Bill Martin Jr. The second part was not true, which will be donated to the Ferguson Elementary School here in the York City School Districts. And next week, a very exciting program as well. Join us for an in-depth conversation with Colonel Dale Holland, U.S. Air Force retired, who will speak on his White House experiences during critical times in our nation and his role as a navigator on Air Force One. Colonel Holland will be honoring all veterans of the uniformed services who served or are still serving during times of peace as well as war, as we celebrate Veterans Day next week. We invite all club members who are veterans to gather at noon next week for a group photo and our annual parade of veterans into our meeting. And our quote, our closing quote for the day. Since the World Series is happening right now, some words of wisdom from Skip Bertman, Hall of Fame LSU baseball coach. What are you working on that you can vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and enthusiastically act upon? Hopefully it's something in addition to the Phils winning the World Series. Friends, that takes care of our meeting today. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.